Lucy's Kitchen, it's Lucy's Kitchen. She's Lucy and she's got a kitchen. Lucy's Kitchen.
And now that we've got your attention, let's cook. Hi there. Welcome to Lucy's Kitchen. I'm Lucy, and this is my kitchen. Today, I'm going to share a recipe for you that's a family favorite, Greek Stuffed Cabbage Rolls. When I was growing up, this was one of our favorite dishes. We absolutely adored it, and my mother was so nice. She always made it for us every time we begged her for it. It was just one of our favorites, and because my mother made it for us all the time, I never actually got the recipe. So I've spent the last few years trying to perfect my version of my mother's cabbage rolls. My mother's filling was something that I could duplicate fairly quickly and fairly easily. But the toughest part for me was figuring out how to get the cabbage leaves off the cabbage. I knew you couldn't just take them off because they would just tear. And no, there was some secret. I remembered my mother, pulling them out of hot water, and I couldn't remember, did she take them off and then boil them? Or anyway, over the years, I've experimented, and now I've got it down. And what you have to do is you have to take the entire cabbage and you have to boil it in a big pot of water for a little while, and then the cabbage leaves come off very easily, as we'll see. So first thing you have to do is you have to remove the core. Now, first of all, I'm going to talk to you about the cabbage because this cabbage is ideal for this dish. And the reason is it's a very heavy cabbage, so you know it has lots of leaves. It's very tight, so you know it's very fresh. And even though I tend to take the outer leaves off and throw them away, I'm not sure I'm going to do that this time. I washed the whole head of cabbage, got rid of any, dirt or whatever might have been on it. And of course, we're going to boil it too. So I'm going to just see how much cabbage leaf I can get out of this. This cabbage is absolutely gorgeous. I got it at my farmer's market, of course. So I'm going to, let's see. We want to make sure we have the right knife for the job. This is a very sharp, long paring knife, and it might work. And I want to make sure I don't slip and then just cut my finger off. So I'm doing this. Okay. So that isn't enough. Next, I'm going to try my boning knife. And oh yeah, I think that might be the trick. Let's see. Oh yes, that's working. This goes in so easily, as it should. Because what do you use boning knives for? To remove bone and fat from meats. Okay, be super careful and pay attention to what you're cutting and how you're cutting it. Okay, so that made cuts deep inside. And now I'm going to just take this and sort of cut around the edge. And all right, so we got the first bit of core. And I'm going to just show you that there's still core in there, and we don't have to get it all out because later on we can trim each leaf as we use it. But I'm going to take some of it out because we don't want too much, and we want this cabbage to cook. And once we've got this core done, there's a little bit more there, and I think we can put it in the hot water. So we're going to put it in the pot, water's boiling, and let it cook for 10 minutes, and then we'll take it out and drain it and let it cool. And I'll be right back to show you how to make the filling. All right, here we are at our big pot. We're going to put the cabbage in. I'm sure you know how to do this, but I don't want you to hurt yourself. And the reason is that this is a pot of boiling water. So don't just take the cabbage and throw it in. It'll splash out on you. I know that's obvious, but I can't help it. I have to warn you. So I'm using a big meat fork, and I'm gently dropping it in there. And there we go. Okay, so then I'm going to cover it, and I'm going to check it in a few minutes, but altogether it's going to take about 10, and then I'll meet you back over there. I've carefully drained this and turned it core side down so it would drain in the sink for a few minutes. Now we need to let it cool off. So I'm just going to let it sit here while I show you how to put together the ingredients for the filling. First of all, we're going to start with some ground beef. This is a pound of very good quality ground beef. I would just look for something that's fairly lean. We don't need a lot of fat in this dish, so 90%, even 92% would be fine. I'm going to add to that a half cup of raw rice. Now, this is a very typical thing in Greek cooking, is to add raw rice to something. For example, if you're making stuffed peppers, the rice in there is raw. You cook it for a long time to make sure that the rice cooks, and that's what we're doing too. And then we're going to add, I'm going to add all the spices, and I'm going to add the onions. So we've got a half a cup of chopped parsley, and I'll just get my little, we've got a half teaspoon, or maybe it's a quarter teaspoon, I don't know, it's in the recipe, cinnamon and cumin. And right here I've got a half teaspoon, I know this is a half teaspoon of dried mint and dried dill. Great flavors. I've got a couple of teaspoons of salt and a teaspoon of pepper. Put that in there. And I've got a couple of tablespoons of tomato paste. And so we're going to put that right in the meat. That'll give it a nice rich flavor. And it'll help make the sauce really tasty. And then I have an egg. So I'm going to do just that with my egg. And finally, I've got 1 large chopped onion. That's about 2 cups of onion, maybe even 3. Don't worry about how much onion it is. It's going to be fine. And except for the rice, you could actually make keftedes out of this meat, which are little Greek sausages, and with all of these seasonings, and just like this. It's really, this is why I was able to duplicate this fairly quickly, the filling, because my mother definitely taught me how to make keftedes. So this just gets mixed up, and you just kind of squish it around. Make sure that it gets mixed in there with the meat. So it's kind of like kneading bread dough or something. You just want it to get all squished up and well distributed. And I'll tell you, the smell of the cumin, cinnamon, and mint and dill in here, oh, it's such a Greek smell. Reminds me of my mom's kitchen, which was always filled with good food. I know this might seem funny, but you just have to use your hands. A wooden spoon will just not do the job. You really just have to get in here, feel it with your hands, and then you'll know it's really well mixed. It's just a necessity. Okay. So, and it's fun too, by the way. It's like playing in the sandbox. So I'm going to wash my hands, and then I'll be back in a sec. Well, it turned out great. It's so beautiful, and it's got tons and tons of leaves. And the top leaf, this is the top leaf that fell off. It's very fragile and beautiful, and it's going to make a really great roll. In fact, it might make 2 because it's so big. I'm going to lay them gently in this colander as I peel them off one by one. And they're, at least for now, they're coming off very, very well, very easily. So I'm putting them in this colander so that if there's any additional dripping, it won't just pool up in the bottom of the bowl. What I love about this cabbage is that these leaves are big, big, big. That's going to make life so much easier. We're making quite a mountain of leaves. We're down to the last few here. And again, you might need your knife to cut a little bit away. There we go. And there. Whoops. Okay, Oh, there we go. Now they're getting very small. We're going to end up with a few small ones, and that's very, very tasty. And then we've got some really tiny ones. All right. And that's it. These are too small to use, but we're going to still save them. So I cleaned up a bit, and while I was doing that, I counted my leaves. We have plenty. We've got 28, and of those 28, I would say a good 10 of them are really big, which means we'll probably be able to have about 3 dozen rolls altogether, which is super. Now, I've got a Dutch oven here, and this is one of the better things you can use to cook them, because Dutch ovens tend to hold their heat, and you can have it on super, super low and let them simmer very, very gently as long as they need to cook. And you don't have to have a cast iron Dutch oven, but a heavy pot is really a good call for this dish. And so I'm going to just start with my first one. Now, I could make a cabbage roll that is that big, and it would probably be pretty wonderful. First of all, I'm going to take this core out, and I'm just cutting out the core, not the leaf, and I'll just throw it right there. There's still a little bit of core. And this is really because the core is very stiff and would tear the leaf as we make the roll. So this one, really I could make 2 rolls out of this. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and experiment. Okay, I'm just going to cut it in half right down that vein. Okay, so that's a good size one. And I'm going to use an ice cream scoop to measure out the amount of meat. That's about probably about a tablespoon. That's all you need. And so you can do any number of things. You can fold it like this, then fold in the sides, and then roll it so it's this lovely little roll. Now we're going to arrange them in our Dutch oven so that they are a tight circle. And then we're going to, when we do the bottom, then we'll do the next layer until we've got them all in there. And, you know, this leaf is torn, but just be creative. Take the leaf and fold it over, and it's fine. It'll hold up. And then I've got my meat, and you can even flatten it out a little so that it's more of a little cigar shape. We're going to have plenty to eat here, and it's going to be just a delight, because I'll tell you, when we make these, people want to eat more than just one. These are an entree, but they're sort of appetizer size. Typically, we don't serve this as an appetizer because it has a sauce. So this is an entree. I'm cutting the core out again. And I'm going to go ahead and cut this leaf in half because it is very big. There we go. And I'm going to cut that little bottom thing off. All right, let's just keep going here. Tablespoon of filling. And roll in the sides to keep it all together. We're going to roll it. Oops, see, now that one tore, but that's okay. Again, don't worry. Now you can't tell. And you can put it seam side down, and that'll hold its shape. And you can probably already see how cute that is. These very, very charming little rows of cabbage rolls. My mother didn't know how to cook when she came to the U.S. And the reason is, in Greece, my mother was she was a ladies' dressmaker. In those days, you did not go to a department store and buy clothing. In those days, you had, at least in Greece, you had somebody make your clothes. No matter what neighborhood you were in, people either made their own clothes or they hired somebody to do it. My mother started her business when she was 16 years old. She was very, very talented. You could just show her a dress in a magazine, and the next thing you know, she had duplicated it, and you were wearing it. A lot of her customers in America just loved that. My father was a custom tailor. So the two of them had a business and were tailors. And when my mom first came, she didn't work at first, and so it gave her a chance to learn a little bit of English and some of the customs of America, but it also gave her a chance to learn how to cook. Because in Greece, her mother-in-law did a lot of the cooking, or her mother did. She really didn't have to do any cooking. She did have a talent for it, though, I will say. So when she would taste something at somebody's house, she'd ask them how to make it, and then she'd go home and she'd make that dish, and it was, mostly successful. Well, she had never made stuffed cabbage leaves. And I remember being a little girl and being with my parents, visiting some friends, some Greek friends, and they invited us to stay for dinner, and they were serving stuffed cabbage rolls. And I was, I don't know, maybe 7 or 8 years old. And my mother and I just both loved the cabbage rolls, and my father did too, actually. So much so that when we got home, I just begged my mother to please make these cabbage rolls. It was the best thing I had ever tasted. And my mother, of course, wanted to please me because I wasn't much of an eater. And so she thought, oh, good, something my daughter will eat. And so she called her friend and got the recipe. And I was listening while she talked on the phone, and I could hear her talking, and I could hear her getting the ingredients and writing them down. And I heard her say, "Ne che peperi," which means yes, and pepper. And I just flipped out because I was not a fan of pepper. As a matter of fact, pepper was one of those things that was used as a threat by Greek families. If you weren't behaving properly, they would get the pepper shaker and fill your mouth with pepper. At least that's what they threatened to do. Now, did they ever really do that? I did get pepper once in my life, and actually it was hot pepper, and I'll never forget that. I almost never forgave my mother for it, but I had a great fear of pepper. So now I heard her say, oh, and pepper, of course, pepper. And I thought, oh my God, no, I can't eat that. And I started to cry. When my mother got off the phone, I said, please don't make it with pepper. And my mother's like, oh, honey, it's going to be delicious. This is just how they make it. And I'm like, no, please don't make it with pepper. I'm just going to die. And she finally just promised, okay, fine. I won't make it with pepper. I promise I won't make it with pepper. And so I guess she didn't. And when we had them for dinner, naturally, they were bland. And I was just crazed, like, oh my God, Mom, you don't know how to cook. I mean, these just aren't the same, and you didn't get the right recipe, and so on. I mean, I admit it, I tortured the poor woman. Well, anyway, eventually I got used to the idea of pepper, and I was a much better dinner companion after that. But that's my story about how these came into my awareness. So anyway, it's pretty typical that sometimes you start with something that you think you hate, and eventually it becomes your favorite dish. And this was by far one of my favorites. It's also because it's time consuming. I appreciated that my mom was willing to make it for me anytime. When she would come visit us when we lived in different places, and she and my father would come and visit, or after my father passed away, she'd come and visit. And the first thing she would do would be to make us stuffed cabbage leaves. So it's a very happy memory for me. And as you noticed earlier, there's plenty of pepper. Look how nice and neat they are. If you just started boiling them like this, they could just float and you could lose their beautiful shape. Now, cabbage rolls, once you've cooked them, You can freeze them, save them for another time. I wouldn't freeze them without cooking them first. You can also cook them early on, leave them in the pot, and which is what I do, and then warm them up again gently in the same pot. We tend to serve these straight out of the pot, and you know, because they're fragile, and if you transferred them to a you know, like a platter or something, they just get so cold really fast, and you don't want that. You want to serve them warm. It seems like one side of the leaf is more flexible than the other, so I'm taking advantage of that and folding that over the filling. Okay, we're almost done with our second row. Don't want to waste any of it. A little tiny one. Let's see if I could put, oh, I have enough for just one more. Let's see, I cut these out earlier. Maybe I'll do a two-sided one. There we go. Oh, perfect fit. So, here, I'm going to just, now you can see them. Aren't they gorgeous? This is like, I can't believe how good they are. So meet me back over at the sink, meet me at the stove, and I'll show you how to top them off, and then we'll cook them and we'll try them out. So we're going to just, I'm going to just push them down a little bit so that they compress. We don't really want them flying open during cooking. And we've got some tomato sauce. It's about a cup of tomato sauce. It's just plain tomato sauce straight out of the can. And we're just going to pour it over the top. And just do a little bit more. Get all of that out there, all that goodness. Okay, and then I've got a quarter cup of olive oil. So I'm just going to pour this over the top. And that's going to give us a really nice flavor. And finally, I'm going to add enough water that it just barely comes up the sides. And so just pour that a little bit over the top, a little bit over the sides. I have 4 cups of water here, and it just depends on how big your pot is and how many you have. Let's see. Well, I'm going to go ahead and put in a little more. You know, it doesn't hurt to have extra sauce. You can just dip your bread in it. So that was, oh gosh, I'd say a little bit more than 2 cups, 2.5 cups, but that's for this pot. In your pot, it might be more, it might be less. And I've got these really nice bay leaves. I'm putting those on top. And then this is the most important part because, as I said, we don't want them floating around. So you need to have something that's heavy enough that will push down on them. And, well, let's see. Make sure it fits in your pot fairly snugly. Let's see if that works better. I think that works better. Okay, and so that's it. Now we're going to bring them to a boil and then simmer them for 1.5 to 2 hours. And then we're in for a real treat. So I'll see you back here in a little while. This cabbage roll dish has been just a joy. First of all, the cabbage itself, because it was so fresh, cooked more quickly than usual. Sometimes you have to let everything cook for 1.5 hours. We just had to cook it for 1 hour and it's done. So I tested it earlier, so I know it's done. get rid of my lid. Okay, as you can see, I've got this crazy plate here, and the plate is hot. My recommendation is use a long tongs. Make sure you have a good grip on it, okay? You don't want it to suddenly crash to the floor. And then set it on a hot pad, and then you're ready. Okay, oh my God, isn't that gorgeous? Not to mention that it smells amazing. I can smell the cinnamon, and oh, look at that. And it's got just the right amount of liquid juice, which we're gonna want because I've got a hunk of good country bread here to go with it. So I'm gonna go ahead and serve myself a few. And remember, these were the ones that were the least beautiful, but they still turned out great. They look great on the plate. And I think that's good. I'm going to also get some of this delicious sauce. Pour some of that on top. And I'm going to garnish with some parsley. First of all, I'm going to put some right here. Hide that spill. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to take my towel and clean that off. Put the parsley in the plate for a nice contrast. And get a hunk of this really good country bread. And place it on the side. And actually, I think I'll do it like that. Okay, there. Isn't that pretty? Okay. And I'm serving it with a little Greek country salad. This is a country dish. So it doesn't have any lettuce. It's just olives, feta, of course, tomatoes, cucumbers, and green peppers with some fresh oregano sprinkled on top. It's perfect. So that's going to be my salad, and here we go. I can't wait to taste this. It is quite hot. So let me just get in here. All right. Wow, that is delicious. My mother would be proud. Oh, I can taste the cinnamon. I can taste all of the onions, but it's just all subtly mixed together. It's just a beautiful dish. Well, I hope you give it a try. I know it's a lot of work, but as I said, it's worth it in the end. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining us here on Lucy's Kitchen. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and come back next week when we share more recipes from my kitchen to yours. She's Lucy and she's got a kitchen. Lucy's Kitchen.